create dance on paper, and she's creating limited edition prints, fine art prints that are going back to the choreographers to exhibit and sell as another way of an economic support when the dancers are not on stage, the creators are not on stage. And we're doing a similar, helping her execute a similar way to think about this moment, which is, she was very curious about how composers were thinking today. So we've asked 100 composers to invite them to put their thoughts on a napkin, creating a chain letter for this moment in history. Also that will be exhibited. And then Pomegranate is launching a new series at our new home in Jersey City next week at the Mana Contemporary Arts Center, where we're going to be screening for the first time Einstein on the Beach, the film, the show that we produced, but was filmed in Paris. And we're going to be showing it live for 50 people a night next week, and with tacos and popcorn, distancing and safely, and hopefully the beginning of a series where we can support artists each month to try out new ideas in intimate settings and keep the new work going and developed in ways that we can. Thanks.
And now back to Yvonne to talk a bit about Parsnip Ship.
Hi again. So the Parsnip Ship was launched in spring 2015 as a fun passion project rooted in bringing back this old form radio plays. So we really just wanted to sit in a living room and listen to radio plays and record it and make it a podcast. Since then, we have grown to be a platform that's rooted in innovation, community development, and collaboration with our artists. So we're also very much a hybrid theater arts company. So we do a live reading. We also have musicians. I also interview the playwrights. That's all recorded live in downtown Brooklyn and then exported as a podcast that is for free and accessible and is listened in many, many countries, including obviously the United States. Over the last 5 years, Parsnip, we've worked with over 350 artists. This includes the playwrights, directors, musicians, and actors. Some of the collaborators, we already know each other, and it's like a fun project, passion project for them to do. And sometimes they don't know each other, and we have to create a relationship that feels artistically worthy and artistically fun and engaging for everyone to be part of. And specifically, the thought of audio theater has gotten interesting and new traction during this COVID time. I think last year I was still hearing that this is not real theater because it existed in this digital space, and it felt like people couldn't capture it for 8 weeks, 8 times a week, 8 nights a week. But you know, you can just listen to it whenever you feel comfortable. But since COVID, Parsnip has seen a 300% increase in our listenership. And this is up from the 200% increase that we have seen over the last year, actually, or I should say specifically the last 3 years, as our seasons are specifically highlighting playwrights that are systemically underrepresented and underproduced in the American theater landscape. So we have had 3 seasons, we've had 5 seasons, but the last 3 seasons have been a concentration of playwrights of color, women-identified playwrights. This include non-binary femme playwrights and also trans, non-conforming gender identifying folks, and also queer playwrights. We have also, during this time, developed digital pop-up work sessions with our creatives, a play club that meets bi-weekly, and various happy hour events that we showcase on social media. And since we did not have to pivot as many other theater companies had to do in terms of digital programming and engagement, we have been repurposing the 40+ episodes that we have recorded live over the last 5 years and making them into weekly live radio play broadcasts via social media. Again, going back to why we started Parsnip, which was a space for gathering and a space for listening to a story and feeling other people around you. And specifically with audio theater, what has been quite interesting over the last year is people understanding and reframing their mind about cultivating and creating their own imagination for what they are hearing and what they can't see. And so we've also been seeing people really leaning into deep listening, deep thought, wanting to engage with our artists in many ways, and we're actively responding to that as best as we can. And in addition, we're partnering with a lot of institutions who have the money and resources to support the new stories that we are currently commissioning and producing, and should be out by the end of the year. So if you're interested in Parsnipship, you can find us online.
Thanks, Yvonne, and over to Rachel and Catherine at the office.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting us. We're at the office where traditionally we've been curators and producers. And when the pandemic hit and all of artists immediately found that their sources of income were stopping, we're looking at all of these crucial emergency funds come up, but we were also thinking about what's sustainable after people get enough money to pay their rent for the first month. And not only what's sustainable, but is this totally scorched earth moment an opportunity for us to really think of what we want to see going forward? And with that in mind, we came up and launched and piloted this project, which is basically a WPA project called Artist at Work. And we're piloting it in Western Massachusetts with six cultural hubs. And the structure is very easy. It's you go into a region and you collaborate with 6 cultural hubs, and we don't call them institutions because it's a really diverse group of cultural hubs who many of whom wouldn't consider themselves institutions. So it's the fancy pants, Jacob's Pillow and Mass Mocha, but it's also the under $200,000 budget Institute of Musical Arts. We ask them each to select an artist through various protocols. We put those artists on salary and health benefits from the office, and we wanted it to be salary rather than a grant because we wanted them to be eligible for unemployment and COBRA after the cycle of the project. We're paying those artists to do 2 things. They have 2 deliverables, if you will. The artists are paid to make the beautiful work they make in their practice, whatever that is, those practices that help us all make meaning of the world. And they're also paid to be embedded in a local social impact initiative. So it's local cultural hubs, local artists, and local social impact initiatives. For instance, our choreographer, Dante Brown, is being hosted by Jacob's Pillow and is embedded in Roots Rising, which is a food justice organization. Our musician, Naya Kete, is hosted by the Institute of Musical Arts and is embedded with Alianza, which is a group that works with youth at risk. Our filmmaker is hosted by a local cinema, nonprofit cinema, and is working with an opioid addiction project. So and it's very, very scalable. In the full aspiration of the project, which we're putting together public-private funding for, there's 18 artists at an institution, and they're all working with different local social impact initiatives. Also, because we didn't want to go in and cannibalize the arts funding that everybody is so desperate for now, we really have kind of position this as a workforce resilience program in terms of funding resources, and are looking at, because we're dealing with mental health initiatives and drug avoidance and criminal justice initiatives, we're really looking at funding that is not traditional arts portfolio, our usual suspects, Ford, Mellon, Duke. We're trying really to think about who are the other funders that would be interested in something that impacts the whole ecosystem of a community, rather than just, we think of culture so much of something that takes place in a fixed seat situation often, And I think we've all been talking about for so long access and what access means. And to us, it usually means, is it free or is it low cost? And do people feel welcome and embraced by our venue? But now's a real moment to think, instead of bringing, people to the art, let's bring art to the people and really integrate it into the entire structures of communities where we know you can't have a healthy society without art. I mean, what's getting us through this is, watching Netflix, reading books. We're being saved and taken through this by the artists. And that's just a crucial part of healthy communities. So we have identified partners in 6 different regions across the country, and and while the pilot is going on in Western Mass, which we're learning something from every single day from the artists and the people who are running the social impact initiatives, we're busy setting it up in 6 different regions. So that's the Artist at Work story.
Beautiful. And on to Miranda from Los Angeles Performance Practice.
Hi, everyone. It's just a joy to be part of this amazing group of producers. Many of them I had looked up to over the last 10 years when I was first getting started. So as creative producers, we are also working alongside artists who are actively generating new work right now and thinking about new ways of working right now that meet our current moment. One of these examples would be Andrew Schneider's Acting Stranger, which was presented 2 weeks ago at On the Boards, with contributions from dramaturg Rael Myrick Hodges and 2 Seattle-based artists, Mina Lee and Fox Whitney. Acting Stranger is a multi-layered work created to help us all collectively figure out how we will reconnect with each other again in slow stages, from the drudgery of another video conference call to possibly, maybe in 2 years, a full embrace with a complete stranger. Each iteration of Acting Stranger thrives on being authored within the world's current moment, its freedoms, restrictions, debates, hardships, resiliences, and humanity. So the goal for this project is to set out a 2-year trajectory starting from last month to really help us track and understand how we start to meet each other across time and space again and reimagine our new future. And the way it works is a small team will travel to work collaboratively with a small local team. They write and film short sequences that are then performed by strangers who sign up to participate through the presenter's website. The project is very hybrid in nature. It provides a safe, high-touch engagement for approximately 30 community members, followed by a public screening that can happen online, or On the Boards presented this as a drive-in movie event. And then a 3rd layer of online engagement is available following, so presenters can host these videos on their website for a period of time to really expand participation and viewership. So I share this as an example of ways that all of us are working with artists to respond in a meaningful way to some of the restrictions and opportunities that we have. That's
Amazing.
it for me, Tony. Thank you.
And now we'll be moving on to some of the programs that CIPA will be undertaking over the next few years. Sophie?
Yes. Hi, my name is Sophie Blumberg, and I'm an associate producer with Octopus Theatricals, but I'm actually here to talk to you today about a program called the Producer Hub. And so the Producer Hub is an affiliate platform of CIPA with the goal of providing an online resources that showcases and supports the wide variety of producing models that exist in the world of live performance. We aim to do this specifically through shared business and educational resources and by providing opportunities for peer-to-peer learning. As the case studies you just heard show, so many of these producing models are directly reflective of the strengths and experiences and values of the producer heading up a project or organization. And the Producer Hub's goal is to provide a portal through which we can access each other's processes and knowledge. So we believe that education and the evolution of a producing practice is a lifelong pursuit. And as our practices evolve, so do our needs. And so through frequent communication, research, and surveys, our programming is designed to serve the community at every individual's stage of development. So we're talking about serving producers at every level of their practice, from the top of their field to emerging producers to artists who self-produce and might not even know to call themselves a producer. All of these people still have need for the resources and infrastructure support that we're going to provide. And thanks to our alliance with CIPA, the Producer Hub will be able to operate as a gateway for members who may not initially identify as producers, which will allow us to bring in a diversity of voices, perspectives, and approaches. And because this resource is built for producers by producers, we started out by asking ourselves and our colleagues the question, what do we wish we had known when we were just starting out? What were the pain points then, and what are the pain points now? And we're building the Producer Hub's foundation on the answers to these questions. So in the initial phase of the Producer Hub, we're able to offer fiscal sponsorship, a producing job board, a funding and grants database, a professional development and opportunities database, and a list of anti-racist and EDI resources for the arts community. In the future, we will continue to add resources, including basic templates for budgets and contracts, a public Ask a Producer series, which is the producing specific Dear Abby, visa application support, social events, masterclasses, guest speakers, and webinars and roundtables that address the urgent issues in our community and how we are addressing them personally. So our first series, which we will announce soon, will center around the question of how to produce ethically in 2020, and will deal with topics such as force majeure, new media contracts, and sustainable theater practices. Beyond professional development of the Producer Hub is seeking to be a connective space for any stakeholder in the making of live performance. We prioritize exchange as a means of learning, and that means that we can't work in a vacuum. We need the voices not just of producers, but also of artists, presenting organizations, and culture workers. So everyone on this call are also our colleagues and our collaborators, and we hope that by building the Producer Hub, we can be responsive in our programming to the entire live performance sector. So you can join us at producerhub.org, where you can sign up for our mailing list and stay up to date on resources and services as we add them. I'm going to pass it over to Tommy now to talk about the New Work Development Network.
Beautiful, thank you. The New Work Development Network is something I've been talking about for a couple of years. The question at hand with the New Work Development Network is how we create a generative arts ecology that is the responsibility of all of us. We know that as presenters and as agents and as managers and as others, that we are responsible for the distribution of finished work. What we don't pay enough attention to, in my humble opinion, is the creation of that work and how we must support the creation of that work. Too many of our independent artists are left to facilitate the own creation of the work, but they're doing so at extremely diminished resources, which is not allowing them the most fulfilling and, shall we say, resourced process so that they are given the chance to develop the most realized work possible. So what we want to figure out is how to catalyze participation in new work development processes for a broader group of venue partners. We have a lot of presenters who take an extraordinary role in the creation of new work and the commissioning of new work. We need to broaden that base. We know that not every presenter has the resources to do so. So how do we get them the resources to do so? We do know that every presenter has something to offer, whether it be space, whether it be resources in housing, whether it be some way to offer space and generative support for artists. How do we support the presenters to present that work and prioritize the importance of new work development and the creation of a thriving new work ecology across the United States in every genre, in every sector, in every region, so that artists across the board are being supported in the best way possible. And we do that by defining and really articulating and allowing an understanding on a general basis of what the phases of development are, so we have a deeper understanding of how we're contributing toward those phases. And we also localize resources so that artists are sharing in the localization of that work in a way that enriches both the presenter and the artist, in the way that both are supporting each other in a deeper and richer way. So we're really enlarging the producing process to encompass the whole of the industry. And we're looking for the funding that's going to catalyze that and allow that in the sharing and the growth of new work. And on now to, back to Miranda to talk about mentorship.
So as CIPA, we have these individual initiatives that have been brought together under the full umbrella of CIPA. The Producer Hub lives in virtual space. The New Work Development Network will bring more of our work into a tangible experience with artists. And CIPA's mentorship efforts will aid the growth of the field through supporting emerging talent. CIPA producers are available for consultations with aspiring and emerging producers. We are looking to connect with producers nationally, so if you know of anyone, please direct them to our site. And we are currently developing and seeking funding for a producing fellowship, which would place emerging producers in direct mentorship with some of the leading producers in this group.
Beautiful. Rika, take us
Wow.
home.
Okay. So we've now shared a lot with you guys. Maybe this is a good moment to briefly unshare the screen. I want to see everybody who's here. Tommy, would you mind closing the window here? I hope you're all still with us. There is just so much innovation and creativity here. And what I'm seeing is that we're not only creating and producing new work, but we're creating new systems together. And that's so inspiring. But this is where you guys come in. We invite all of you here in the audience to think with us and hopefully take action. I don't know if we have any artists in the room today, but if you're an artist, or if you're working closely with an artist and looking to expand a particular project or an idea, tell us what you need. As you heard today, we produce theatrical works, site-specific works, live, digital, hybrid works, dance, theater, music, multimedia, public art, immersive narratives, you name it, everything in between. Let's discuss your ideas. Take inventory of the elements that go into making your work and the supportive structure for you. Consider partnering with a creative producer. And if you're already working with one, then identify the many ways they might be bringing value to your work and practice. And then finally, as artists, you will be able to tap into the CIPA network and all the programs that we're designing, and the knowledge and resources to scale your idea and expand your reach.
And as presenters, if you're looking to commission new work, you may consider, or designing a new commissioning program, you may consider where creative producers play a role in that, in the larger coordination of that piece. Or a group of us on board as hired experts at any stage in your planning, who can consult in the manufacturing of the work and the stages of development of the work and how to articulate that in the best way, and helping to facilitate the artist for the present and for the future planning of the piece beyond your creation period within your area. Consider how to leverage resources collectively with a coalition of partners, from venues to producers to funders, to strengthen the work's creative process and broaden distribution potential. Too many of us work in silos. How can we broaden every strategy that we have, that we make sure that the long-term development of the artist and the long-term planning for the work in its longer life is also being addressed simultaneously in the very, very initial stages of the work. If you're looking for creative content to fill programming gaps, of course, we can help with that. We're working alongside artists who are developing projects for this moment, and in the future. And look for CIPAUSA.org for a list of artists supported by CIPA for ideas. Miranda?
And if you're an agent or manager and looking to pair your artist with a creative producer to elevate and expand their project, consider reaching out to CIPA producers. You can look at the team around an artist's work and think holistically about maximizing the impact and the role that each of us can play. We also invite you to consider your own practice and see how you could expand upon it by perhaps becoming a producer yourself or collaborating with one of us. Mara?
You're muted.
Sorry, got it. Okay. If you're a funder and have never funded creative producers, or if you have funded the work we have produced but didn't necessarily know we existed, we would love to engage in dialogues with you. We encourage you to develop initiatives that place the support of the artist and the creative producer at the center of the project. And we invite you to examine the current systems and structures and how you might be a positive force for change. Oh, sorry. how you might be a positive force for change. That is it. Miranda, back to you.
Yeah, and if you're a producer or not sure if you are one, but curious about it, please visit cipausa.org. Currently, CIPA is free to join with open self-selected enrollment at any time, and our contact information is listed there. You can discuss the opportunities the current crisis present to us, such as a deeper awareness of need, interconnectivity, equity, and sustainability as systems that are rebuilt, and core funding reoriented toward long-term sustainability. There's a lot of conversations that we can have together in order to remain pliable and build a network for multiple platforms. Artists, once again, are proving themselves to be unsinkable. So what is our role in making sure that they have room to realize processes that give them the best chance at achieving quality? I'll also say the chair of our membership committee is in the meeting, Sandy Gardner. So if you're interested in learning more about CIPA, please just drop your contact information in the chat. And I won't volunteer for Sandy, but I'll definitely pick up your information and we can reach out to you following the conference.
Great, so that concludes our presentation portion. We're now into our Q&A portion. Joe, are you still with us?
Yeah, very much so, Tommy. I actually wanted you to answer a question from a colleague of ours who's based in the UK and works both with UK and Australian artists, and asks, is CIPA open to international memberships?
By all means, yes. We plan on covering our work worldwide. Clearly, we're addressing an American problem, as so many of us are addressing in a year of America. But we are, of course, really interested in how the intricacies and network of producers working in the United States operates, not just within the strategies that the US presents us, but that strategies that are presented worldwide as well. And the interchangeability with all of our functions and how we operate and how we can learn from you and you learn from us is absolutely vital to how creative producers work in the United States and how we will continue to work in the future. So that is a huge part of our ambition. It's a huge part of how we plan to proceed.
You got frozen, Tommy. Okay. Rika, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can. I think Tommy.
Only because Tommy is frozen screen on my computer. Okay.
Same here.
We'll all pipe in.
Okay. I don't know then whether or not what I see on my chat list here is being experienced by everyone else, but I do. So I'm just going to take one moment to actually read from Christy Edmonds to everyone. You are all national treasures and have and do change and add to the global cultural landscape. And I just wanted to thank you all. And so for me being the old guy of being an arts presenter for the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and I've worked with a range of you colleagues, I too want to acknowledge the extraordinary work that all of you have done and for making this particular resource happen to everyone who's watching. The facts are that what you are doing is changing the cultural landscape through the articulation and your openness to collaborate with one another. This is a paradigm change from how the performing arts professional presenter worked in this country. And so you are all innovators and pathfinders in this process. I want also, listening here objectively, it is profoundly clear that you're artist-centered, that you derive your own creative imagination fertility from your interaction working with the range of artists you are all working with. And this is real. This is not kind of theory. You all work in the real world of getting artists to make work here in North America that gets distributed throughout the structure of our complicated territories, plural. And hopefully, because I know, again, about your work, it does participate in the global dialogue of the exportation of the work that is done, crafted, created here, distributed throughout the world. I do want to advise, when one of your colleagues, Linda Bloomberg, brought up the subject of advocacy, is very, very important to understand that that is a significant strategy for what you are doing. You do need to capture the imagination and intellect of arts funders to upgrade who you are individually and what it is that you do professionally. I'm telling you, they don't understand you. Historically, they don't really understand the creative process. If they don't understand the creative process, how do you expect them to understand what the producing creative process is? You have to tell them. You have a story, you have a narrative to tell. You have got to get your asses out in the marketplace and creating a very active advocacy strategy. What is significant about this 1 hour that we have spent together is how much work you are collectively making with artists, with them making art the way that you have been as great creative problem solvers, have made it possible for them to breathe and express themselves and add to our identity as human beings and make this civilization as strong and possible that the future generations have the performing arts and the vitality of a culturally diverse art in their lives. So, just to say, I want to read again some of the reaction from your colleagues is, amen, changing the cultural landscape. We are driving our arts ecosystem forward, and thank you for reimagining the landscape for all of us. By coming together, you are more visible and are a collective force of change. I echo that completely. So, Tommy, it's back to you.
Okay, well, we've got about 3 minutes. Are there any other questions or thoughts? We'd love to have them.
Michael Reed's raising his hand.
All right, Michael Reed, please.
Thanks, Tommy, and I'm foolish enough to follow Joe. Joe, hello. Hello
Hi,
to everyone.
Michael.
So nice to see everyone. A couple things, trying to connect some dots here. You know, that whole idea that all politics is local, I do feel strongly and have through the years that in a very large sense, arts presenting and creation does have a very powerful local element to it. And by that, and also in this moment, we're looking at the world blowing up in a way, metaphorically and realistically. And what do we do with the pieces? And I think one of the things in this conversation that I'm going to encourage and am encouraging all my colleagues on is the first conversation that happens with presenters that work with artists, that work with independent producers. The first conversation is with independent producers, maybe not with artists. That's one approach that I'm going to start to try and take when I can, when it's appropriate. The other approach is in this moment of a raised consciousness about a heinous 401-year-old legacy in our country. In big universities, there's a consciousness and there is a call for action happening. It's happening at our university, and to connect to that in regard to what artists want to talk about and connect them with our student leaders on the genesis and the very beginning stages of work, I think is also another powerful connect here. dots. And I don't think it's limited to university presenters. Artists that have really strong ties with community organizations would work as well. So what I'm trying to look at and encourage in conversations is also something that's connected to this task force working group we're doing at APAP to look at more ethical business practices and force majeure, contractual approaches that from the very beginning, from an authorizing environment like a huge university, to say to the folks, well, we're needing to hire a consultant on this. That consultant happens to be an independent producer. And then there's not an issue with advance payment and all these things that we're grappling with us who are beholden to large institutions with their ironclad rules. To sort of reinvent and walk around what those rules are to be able to really address some of the needs that are here, but also some of the ways we can make each other stronger. So that's a long-winded set of observations, but I wanted to put them out here. And I am just in awe of the work that I've heard about and the creativity mixed with survival mode. You guys are amazing.
Thank you so much, Michael. Michael Alexander, you had your hand up.
Those of you who remember Jerry Willis will appreciate or not appreciate to hear that Caltech has got much more myopic than it was during his days. And if any of you that are working on the producing side have projects that have a direct connection to science, artists exploring sciences or health issues, please get in touch with me. And I'm going to let you know too down the road as I'm working with some of the scientists on some of the arts projects that we're trying to develop as well.
Anyone else? I see a question here, maybe someone else from the from Isabel Soffer asking how and if music producers and productions fit into CIPA. Thoughts on that?
I think the answer is yes.
Very definitely.
100%.
We're not
A Tony Award winning producer for an American musical, yes.
I think the whole idea is that we're getting rid of the silos. We're supporting independent producers who are working across genre. Sometimes a single producer is working across genre. And so as long as the members sort of sign on to these sort of shared values of doing artist-centered work, about creating work in an equitable fashion, absolutely. And for live performance specifically.
I'm going to just jump in for a minute because I feel like getting back to the advocacy piece, I know many of us have really had incredible long-term relationships with a group of presenters who are producers themselves, who understand the creation of work, who are ongoing partnerships. And I will just say, really in the last 3 decades, that group of presenting partnerships has not grown much. It's the same group of people. Very few people, I'm just saying this as a statement in our country, in terms of the sort of understanding and the educational component. What Joe said, I think, really resonates with me in terms of it is our job to advocate for ourselves. I know we have colleagues here that are going to be alongside us, both the artists and the presenters, but we've gone through the back door as a sector in the arts funding field, and mainly because 95% of us are set up as corporations, not 501c3s. It's a structural problem, and it's a structural problem that we, decided to do as a sector, so we have the nimbleness to work on the timeline of how contemporary artists are making work in our society quickly, efficiently. So we've been playing this game and working together on like how we write our grants and where the money goes and how it comes back to us through the door of our presenting partners who have found every kind of way to make it happen for us, just like we have. But I think that the missing part is the foundation, the arts funders and foundations. We need to be part of the language on the grants, part of the language. And what Rika was saying about the commercial producer. In our own field, we don't even have that language. In our own conferences, we recognize agents, managers, presenters, grants. You know, we just need to start changing the languages. That's starting to happen now. I'm very excited that it's happening now with this group, but we have a ton of work to do. And I think that that's what we're sort of, you know, spending this year on now, to get that advocacy and educational part front and center, Joe. I couldn't agree more.
One suggestion is that I think the leadership of CIPA should get in touch with Emil Kang at the Mellon Foundation. He was one of the participants in the ecology of making new work. And again, information, establishing a new relationship, because he's a program director at the Mellon Foundation now. Very important, that's a recommendation.
Yeah, and I will tell you that Emil, we are in conversation with Emil and have been, and are very much aware, because in that world, you are absolutely 100% right. There are a few people that really understand what it takes and aligns the creative producer in the seat with the artist for the execution and development of new work. That you're 100% right. And that has been, that is an absolute advocate seat for us, for sure.
Okay,
I just posted the website on. I just posted the website once again. I encourage you guys to check it out. CIPAUSA.org. We will be on social media as well. CIPA Live is the handle. Again, we're just getting started. The press release just went out, I think, yesterday. So, and I want to just shout out to the producers who are not speaking on this panel but are in the room. So, great to have you guys here. And yeah, join us. Join in on the conversation.
Thank you so much for coming, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you.